Hi Omar Efendim, my name is Iman, I'm here from Aslan Media, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So I'll just ask you a few questions. First up, give our viewers an insight to how you got into the music industry.
Well, I've been doing this for a long time. I started first writing rhymes and making beats when I got into college, into the University of Virginia. And I wouldn't necessarily say I'm in the industry. I kind of function on the peripheries of the industry, which I think is one of the modern phenomenons of the internet. I've never really sent a demo to a record label or done anything like that. I've just kind of done it all on my own, independently, using, at first, this website that we had back in the day called MySpace. And then, obviously, using Facebook and Twitter and YouTube just to kind of build the fan base in a, I guess, digitally organic way. And and it went on from there, and I've just had the good fortune of being invited to perform, all over the world, really. And I think it's just a result of both, perhaps how timely the stuff is, given current events in the world and America's involvement in the Middle East, etc. But then also, I just think, that's a reflection of hip-hop. It's a very universal culture, and it appeals to different people all over the world for different reasons. And so I always felt that there was a strong connection between Arab culture, the affinity for poetry and for music and things like that, and hip-hop. And so it was no surprise to me that it started to kind of take off in the Arab world as well.
Okay. So let's talk a bit about Syrian Americana. Explain to us how you compiled this album.
Well, this album, which is my first solo album, I released it about 1.5 years ago, almost coming up on 2 years actually. And it was a compilation or basically a culmination of many years of doing work with different artists, because I'd been in different groups and collaborative projects with people. But that was the first time that I had an opportunity to create my own record. And so some of the music or some of the lyrics were written, years before I released it. And some of them were just basically a good representation of where I was at after all those years of working with other people and starting to find my own voice and see what I was comfortable putting out there, my comfort zone, so to speak. And going back to, I guess, my roots, I saw, after 9/11, I saw that the stance many Americans had taken was pretty defensive. We are not terrorists, we are not extremists, and not really giving people an opportunity to understand what it was we were and why we were so proud to be who we were and who we are and our cultural heritage. And so, I dug into my past and started translating old Arabic poetry into English, taking English poetry, translating it into Arabic, and kind of building that bridge with the music. I wanted the album to be a good representation of that, which was just something that I've been doing my whole life, constant back and forth between the quote-unquote East and the quote-unquote West, but then also just being a musical representation of that was important. And that's kind of how it came together, I guess.
Okay, to what extent would you say this album reflects the lives of American Arabs?
Wow, I'm not sure. I've heard a lot of people relate to it for very different reasons. I've had Muslim Americans tell me they relate to it because of my Muslim background and being able to put that into the music. I've had Arabs obviously tell me the same thing, Syrians maybe specifically, but I've also had immigrants of all backgrounds just say how they could relate to the idea of having this hybrid identity, or being both this and that, and both and neither at the same time, And so that, I think, is who it relates to more, really. I wouldn't say that it speaks to anybody in particular. It's an honest reflection of my experience, and then if other people see things they can relate to in that, then that's a beautiful thing, And that's what art has the ability to do,
Yeah. Okay, so you recently released the song Syria in response to, obviously, the 14th-month unrest. I wanted to highlight one of the verses in this song, and it goes like this: I have a dream, this regime will fall, and that what comes next will be better for us all. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, something I often try to do with a lot of the songs that I've written, whether it was about Syria or any of the events of the Middle East over the past 10 years, which are things that I've written about, is try to frame them within the global kind of struggle for peace and justice and humanitarian struggles and civil rights struggles. And so, starting it off with a very famous line to many Americans, I Had a Dream, something that Martin Luther King began one of his most famous speeches with, was something that I did intentionally to kind of begin framing it that way. And then in response to the sectarianism that I think plagues Syria, or at least how people cover Syria, that was something that I wanted to kind of address, right out there, and just say, I have the dream that this regime will fall, but that what comes next will be better for each and every one of us. And so the following lines include the sect from which the regime is from, the Alawi sect, which to many people, might seem demonized, but the reality is, by saying Alawi, Dirzi, Armani Kirdi, kind of reminding people of both our religious and our ethnic diversity, it was important to kind of let people understand that this new Syria we're trying to build is something that all people can feel completely comfortable to take ownership of, And so that was really important, and that was something that I wanted to make sure was highlighted in the song. Something I've often said is that, I noticed about after a year of the revolution, many people had what I guess you could call revolution fatigue. We're getting tired of the imagery and of even just talking about it and dealing with it. And what ended up happening was that the conversation started to steer towards more of a discussion about the proxy war taking place between Iran and Saudi, or between the US and Russia, or the political posturing between these different nations, or the conspiracy theories about who's really on whose side and what. And that was just taking away from the real human suffering and the real need to kind of address what was happening between the Syrian people and their dictator, And so that was something I wanted to kind of reframe with the song as well, or redirect, I think, with the energy of the song. And I actually written it months ago. I wrote it in August of last year, in Ramadan, after the bloodiest day in Hama to date, since 1982. But I wasn't able to release it, and I wasn't comfortable releasing it until I got my family in Syria's blessing, because that would have been reckless, and we've seen many examples of artists and activists and families have been targeted, and so I didn't want to do that. But by doing it back in August, I think it captured a certain sense of urgency and a feeling and emotion that I felt, and I know many people felt, in the first few months of the revolution. And so that was really important to kind of be able to hold on to that feeling and to remind me how it felt and why we were doing what we were doing, as I, tried to, I guess, do that for others as well. So.
Okay, so your song has received over 91,000 hits on YouTube. Explain how the Syrian people have responded to this song, and have you received any criticism by Assad supporters by any chance?
Yeah, definitely. I've received a lot of criticism from people who both support the Assad regime, or people who just may not like the regime but aren't necessarily supportive of the revolution for different reasons. And there's a lot of reasons why people might have those feelings. But generally speaking, it has been a very positive response, an overwhelmingly positive response. Now, even 91,000 might seem like a lot, but it's all relative. Somebody will put out a video of somebody falling down the stairs and will get 15 million hits. I mean, the measure of, I guess, quote-unquote success is different with something like this. But the fact that you can see on YouTube, you can see the analytics of where the hits are coming from, and to see that thousands of the hits were actually coming from Syria, from countries around Syria, was really important for me. It just made me feel like there was that direct kind of communication and connection happening. And like I said, the response has been overwhelmingly positive, but if you want, you can take a stroll through the comments on it and you can see what people think. A lot of it obviously reflects basically the same line of thinking you would see represented in the news, I guess. How I think something I try to remind people of often, and I think this is important, is that it's not just for or against. I kind of hinted at it earlier, but basically, Syria is divided in many different ways over this. You have people who are pro-revolution and pro-foreign intervention. You have people who are pro-revolution but against foreign intervention. You have people who are pro-regime and anti-revolution. You have people who are not necessarily pro-regime but are worried about the chaos and the civil war and the sectarianism and all these things that are being fanned at the moment. And everybody's opinion is just as valid as anybody else. Everybody is Syrian and has a claim to stake. But at the end of the day, as long as people's voices are being silenced in such a violent way, that is the basic issue that has to be addressed. And I think that's something that we tend to forget. When we talk about this, it's not necessarily even-handed. People talk about foreign influence. They say, what about the foreign influence of America and foreign influence of Israel, etc.? Yes, true, but what about the foreign influence of Iran and Russia? Are they not foreign influence as well? How genuine are you being about Syrian sovereignty when you talk about that? So just trying to be as even-handed as possible, as level-headed as possible, which is difficult in these times. People get very emotional, obviously, but
Yeah, of course.
for the sake of Syria, I think it's important to be able to do that in these situations.
Okay, so final question.
Sure.
I believe
I know my answers are like 10 times as long as your questions.
That's fine. Okay, I believe the album Syrian Americana was released last year. Do you have any plans on releasing a new album this year, or what can your fans expect from you?
Sure. So yeah, Syrian Americana was released quite some time ago. Even though the material is still pretty timely, I am working on a new record. I'm really excited about it. I'm working on it with my good friend, a Palestinian-American composer and producer from Southern California. His name is Sami Matar, and he's the one who produced the Egyptian Revolution song we did last year, January 25th, as well as the Syria song. And so just judging from the response we've gotten from those two, I imagine people might like what we're doing, and I'm excited about it myself. I just have been on the road for so long that I haven't had the time to actually work on it and finish it. So I'm looking forward to doing that this summer, and that's the plan, to be in LA to get it done, and start touring again in the fall.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you for coming.
We're looking forward to hearing this new song of yours.
I'm looking forward to it too.
Thank you.
Peace to everybody watching. Thank you all so much.